Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
You're listening to The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak, connecting the reality of the gospel to the grid of life. You can support the podcast and pick up some sweet Flipside swag at www.patreon.com/Noah Filipiak.
What is up, Flipaponami? Welcome to the fourth Wednesday of December. Some do the 12 days of Christmas. We here at the Flip Side do the 5 Wednesdays of December, or of Christmas. That's fine. We are going through the top 5 most listened to podcast episodes of all time on the Flip Side. So, number 2 is going to be today. I've been on a December sabbatical from all work, still on that sabbatical, so please be praying for me, and I'll be back in a couple of weeks, I guess, by the time you're listening to this. Today's episode number 2. Before I jump in, let me give my shout out to Angry Brew. Thanks for sponsoring the podcast. Go to fivelakes.com, angrybrew.com, pick up some coffee. Use promo code FLIP to get 10% off your order. So these are encore replay episodes. They're I guess you could say, maybe the best episodes we've ever done as far as traction goes, interest. These are topics people care about, that people are sharing about. So far, it was my story on sex and pornography was number 5. Number 4 was the story of my alma mater, Cornerstone University, and transitioning to what I consider Christian nationalism. Number 3 was an episode interview with doctors George Bracey and Michael Emerson, and that was about the religion of whiteness. Also had a lot of overlap with Christian nationalism. So you can see some of these kind of, all the top 5 are pretty provocative, episodes. And I think that's the beauty of podcasting. That's why I do the Flip Side. These are some conversations that need to be happening in the church, and often podcasting is a place where we can do that. So today's, so we'll get into number 2, a little drum roll. Today's the number 2, second most listened to episode of all time is episode 69. And episode 69 is with Pastor Jack and Becky Seitzema on being in a mixed orientation marriage and how the church should treat LGBTQ plus people. I recorded this episode in August of 2022, and you'll see as you listen to the intro to that episode here in a moment. This episode 69 is a sequel, part 2, to episode 67, which was part 1, and that's where I share some of my thoughts on LGBTQ plus, theology, people, the way the church should be handling this subject and people. And then in that episode 67, I switch over to Pastor Jack's sermon. It's his testimony of being in what. Well, I'll give you some. I don't know how to organize my thoughts. We have hired Jack as our pastor. Many of you know this. I've shared this on the podcast. We've hired Jack at Mosaic, my church, as our pastor of discipleship and operations, full-time position. He's the one we hired that has allowed me to go down to $0 income, pursuing fundraising through Beyond Ministries and the podcast, if you can support in that way. And so that I'm working 2 days a week at Mosaic plus Sundays. And Jack is the guy working in the office 5 days a week, and that I'm working with. I'm still the senior pastor, and Jack's just been a wonderful teammate, and it's just been a huge blessing for me and for Mosaic. So I met Jack because of this sermon from episode 67. So that's how this comes full circle. Someone in my church had sent me the link. They knew Jack, and he had given this sermon that's in 67 episode at his church, and he describes it like as his coming out sermon. Now, I want to be clear. We've actually since updated the title of episode 67 to, and I don't have it in front of me exactly how we worded it, but Pastor Jack Seitzema, it's his testimony of experiencing same-sex attraction. And that is the language that Jack prefers and uses. And I talk about language, and I'm not sure in that episode or not. For the sake of the podcast, back in episode 67, if you go back and listen to it, if I give a title, I don't remember. But the title used to be gay/SSA pastor. And I used that terminology on the podcast to draw in listeners. Some people use the word gay Christian. Some people say same-sex attraction. It can mean two different things. It can mean the exact same thing. As we've brought Jack in on staff, we just made some decisions together and just being shepherding and discipling. It's one thing to kind of put stuff on a podcast to be provocative and bring listeners in a shepherding context of a congregation. We're not changing the language. I'm just going with Jack's preferred language, which is experiencing same-sex attraction. So if you hear me talk about it now, maybe versus going back and listening to those, or even in this episode, I don't remember exactly what I say in this, but that's just a quick update from, I guess 3+ years ago. So pretty cool though how God brought us together. After I watched that sermon, I got together for breakfast with Jack and just loved the sermon. And I say it here, but it's the best sermon I've ever heard when it comes to LGBTQ plus people, theology. It's better than any of the big names out there. No offense, I've love all the big names. I've interviewed some of them here, the authors that are nationally writing and speaking on this, and I love it from Jack because it's a mixture of a pastor. He's a pastor. He experiences same-sex attraction, and he's just had to. It's not a theory for him. It is his life. It's not a theological subject. It's his life. And so this episode, the number 2 most listened to episode ever on the flip side, is an interview with Jack and his wife, Becky, with both of them on what it's like to be in what's called a mixed orientation marriage. And that means Becky is straight and Jack is not. So you also hear Jack say that he's not straight. That's kind of another wording that he will use. So we'll talk about that. And there's a lot in here about marriage itself, right? Just if you're straight, you're in a, not a mixed orientation marriage, a same orientation marriage, right? You're both straight. There's so much we can learn from Jack and Becky and what it means to love each other and the biblical covenant of marriage between a man and a woman. So really good stuff. And then they talk a lot about their heart for how the church should be treating LGBTQ plus people. And I love it. And I'm so glad now, again, it's like a time warp multiverse, feels like the multiverse, that Jack and Becky are with us at Mosaic. And so is, they had planted a church and those that were still in their church plant, have come over as well. And so it's just been amazing and beautiful. So without further ado, let's jump into episode 69, which is the number 2 most listened to podcast. If you want to skip the intro that I did, though, I think it's helpful because I give some context. Of what the, kind of about LGBTQ plus things and things like that. But you can skip to the 7-minute mark. I think it was 7:00 from when I'm done with this intro. And regretfully, there is a Noah's rant at the end of this episode. So if you, excuse me, so you'll see it's a little bit lengthy. The end of that is Noah's rant. I guess doing the time math, at 1:17, an hour, 17 minutes, and 1 second from the time I'm done with this intro, that's when the Noah's rant alarm goes off. And I do my stupid intro to it. And then the rant starts at a couple minutes after that. This rant, if you so choose to, punish yourself, it is on nasty coffee. And I listened to a little bit of it, and man, I really am I'm intensely ranting on nasty coffee. It's listening to that just now. It's kind of like an old photo from high school, and you go, Did I really wear that? Did I really think that was okay? So if you want to reminisce with me down memory lane, stick around for Noah's rant. You will regret it. You will. So, all right, here we go. Let's jump in to the number 2 most listened to episode ever on the Flip Side podcast.
Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
You're listening to The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak, connecting the reality of the gospel to the grit of life. You can support the podcast and pick up some sweet Flipside swag at www.patreon.com/Noah Filipiak.
What up, Flipopotomi? Welcome to episode 69 of the Flip Side podcast. Don't you love it when you are recording a podcast on video and on audio and you only click record on the audio, not on the video? So you do your whole intro and then you go, I didn't record on video, so I got to go do it all over again. Yeah, I love it when that happens. So not that would ever happen around here. On the flip side, welcome to this episode. And this is part 2. Part 2. Today I'm going to be interviewing Jack and Becky Seitzema. They are pastors. Well, Jack's pastor. Becky, I'm not sure if she's an official pastor, but she might as well be. She's awesome. Says a lot. They're over at Lake Effect Church. I can tell you they're both church planters. They planted Lake Effect Church in Grand Rapids. And about a year ago, Jack shared his testimony with his congregation for the first time. He came out to his congregation, in a sense, for lack of a better word. He shared about being gay or same-sex attracted. He is married to Becky, who is straight. They are in what's called a mixed orientation marriage. And episode 67 of The Flip Side, which is 2 episodes ago, I shared my thoughts kind of as part of the episode on LGBTQ+, and how I think we should approach it as Christians, and some theological views and things like that. That's part 1. So make sure before you listen to today's episode, part 2, you go back and listen to part 1. You don't want to start the Star Wars trilogy at Empire Strikes Back, okay? You got to start it at episode 4, A New Hope, aka what's called Star Wars. Very confusing to those who aren't Star Wars nerds. So sorry about that. But my point is, listen to episode 67, come back, listen to this one, episode 69, because in episode 67, I play that whole sermon. The whole sermon of Jack's. It's the best talk I've ever heard on this subject. It's very well nuanced. It's so good. Go listen to that first, because you're going to get a lot of backstory. You'll get a lot of, no, we don't need that again. Thank you. A lot of backstory about Jack and about Becky, and we don't go over any of that today because you should have already listened to that. So go listen to that first, the backstory and the sermon itself, the testimony itself, and then come back and listen to this one today. So this is part 2, and it's awesome. Interview is already recorded. It is so good. It's just so helpful when we can have conversations and where we go, look, we are all in the same boat in the sense that we need Jesus. We need to find wholeness in him. We look to sex. We look to romantic relationships to give us our wholeness. And that ultimate, truest, deepest sense of wholeness can only be found in the intimacy that Jesus provides. And that is such a beautiful gift that we have in him. And we're meant to be able to in community, help each other along in that path. And so today, I think today's conversation is going to go a long way for those who listen. Hopefully pastors are tuning in and churches are tuning in on how to approach the topic of LGBTQ+ and sexuality at large well. And so prior to jumping into the interview, though, let me just say a quick thanks, a quick shout out to Angry Brew. I've got my Angry Brew here in my awesome Flipopotomi mug. You can get your own Flipopotomi mug or many more amazing Flipside swag. Go to patreon.com/Noah Filipiak and become a patron and support the show. You can also support the show by going to angrybrew.com. I can't talk. Angrybrew.com or 5lakes.com. Pick up a bag of Chris's Blend or Angry Brew. Use the promo code FLIP. you'll get 10% off your order, and you'll be hooking us up with some support as well. So big shout out. Thank you to Angry Brew. Also want to say we talk a little bit in the episode today about Beyond the Battle and about these groups that I run. Those groups, you can find them at beyondthebattle.net. That is not just a commercial. This is truly a plea to you. My groups are for guys. If you're a guy listening and in any way, shape, or form are struggling with sexual sin and temptation, and so many of us are, and we're not talking about it enough in church, and you need a space to be vulnerable with other guys and to grow closer to Jesus and to start to your appetites change from being kind of addicted to what the flesh wants to being, wow, what God has to offer is actually better. That appetite can change, and that's the path we'll go down together for 7 weeks. So go to beyondthebattle.net and sign up for an upcoming group. We would love to get you into a group. On that same note, shout out to Covenant Eyes. Big thanks to Covenant Eyes for sponsoring the Flip Side as well. Prior to jumping into the interview with Jack and Becky, where he'll hear a quick word from Covenant Eyes, awesome accountability software to help you stay away from pornography. I use Covenant Eyes. I need it. You probably need it too. Highly encourage you to jump in, and we'll get you a free 30-day trial of Covenant Eyes so you can try it for free. So thanks to Covenant Eyes. And then let's jump in and hear from Jack and Becky Seitzema. Pornography. It's not a comfortable subject, but 94% of men and 87% of women have seen pornography at some point in their lives. Has porn impacted your life and your relationships? Here's the good news. You can begin the journey to freedom today and have peace of mind knowing you're not alone in the fight. That's how Covenant Eyes works, through biblical accountability. When you sign up, you choose an ally to receive your device reports and walk with you towards a life free from porn and the life that God desires for you. Try it free for 30 days by visiting covenanteyes.com and enter promo code BEYOND at checkout. That's covenanteyes.com, promo code BEYOND at checkout. Freedom begins today. All right, Jack and Becky, here you are on the flip side after we've got to know you a little bit via Jack's sermon a couple episodes ago. So thank you guys so much for joining me on the podcast today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to start by reading an email from a listener that came in after episode 67 that we posted with your sermon, Jack, and your testimony. And this listener says, Noah, thank you for posting the June 25th podcast. It is the best podcast on SSA, same-sex attraction, that I have heard. I admire the bravery of Pastor Jack, and I wish I could do the same. I feel seen, known, and loved after this podcast. All church pastors need to hear it. Thank you for your work. So I just wanted to read that as an encouragement to you both for the story you shared and for allowing me to share it again on this podcast. We know at least one person's life has been profoundly affected by it.
Thank you. That's great.
That's very encouraging. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jack, let's start out with you. We went back and forth a little bit even on how to title these episodes, gay or same-sex attracted. And I've talked about those terms before on the podcast, but it's different for you because you are a real person living a real life. You are a pastor. And I'm not sure listeners, often for straight Christians, the LGBT same-sex attracted conversation debate, if you will, it can be like an academic debate. It could be like a theological debate, and we debate about open and affirming or traditional marriage. We debate about, should it be called same-sex attraction, or should you be able to say gay or LGBT? But for us, it's just theology. It kind of goes in line with other things we debate. But for you, there's real consequences to some of the terms that you use. And please know I'm not asking you to speak for all gay or same-sex attracted Christians here, but how do you navigate those terms, and what resistance do you kind of find yourself stuck between?
Thank you. Well, thank you for that question. That is a good question. I appreciate your compassion to say, you're the real person. It's not a theological debate, because I think the term of, can you call yourself gay? Is it same-sex attracted? What is it? It's become like the new divisive conversation when you talk about Christians trying to steward their sexuality. And I think what's hard for me, so many people, when they want to hear my story, they kind of want to sum it up in one word: gay or same-sex attracted. And it's like, no, this is my sexuality. This is not just one word. It's not one sentence. It's paragraphs to understand my story. So I think sometimes when I'm just talking about my story, I'm just asking for people to kind of let go of some of their assumptions and kind of listen to what the person is saying. Because if you go even back to the Bible doesn't distinguish people between, there's gay people, then there's straight people. It just talks about people. And I think, the term gay and straight and homosexuality or heterosexuality, that was more of a psychology term that came together in the 1800s to help understand how people process things in the world. So when I would refer to myself as same-sex attracted or gay, that's not my identity. That's not who I am. That's just kind of how I am. That's how I experience the world. That's how my sexuality is operates. So I think I get pretty frustrated when, people say, oh, he's gay. Then they have a lot of assumptions that they quick tag on to my story. Yeah. And I think that is kind of some of the fallout from sharing our story. As people quickly hear gay, same-sex attracted, then they have a lot of assumptions, and they're not usually good assumptions. They're not positive. They're more like, oh, he must sleep around. Oh, he must do porn. Oh, he must be unfaithful to his wife. And it's like, wait a minute. We're just saying a word. See, to me, the word gay doesn't describe actions. It's just how a person experiences the world. And so, so do I use I'm gay or I'm same-sex attracted? It depends what the audience is. I find the younger people they're kind of cool with the word gay, and they don't understand that word with a bunch of assumptions about it. But older people, I kind of have to use more of the word same-sex attracted and maybe speak a little slower on kind of describing my experience in the world. So I think that's kind of how, I don't know. Am I answering your question? Did I make it?
Yeah.
Clear? Okay.
Yeah, that's good. I wanted to get your take on it, and I don't want to even share mine, because I do think everybody has a different reason for using. I know friends that use the term same-sex attracted to describe themselves, and others that intentionally want to use the word gay, even or LGBT, even though they're living what we would consider, a biblical traditional view of. They believe in sex between a man and a woman, but they're gay. And so there's some that go out of their way to use the word gay, and there's others that go out of their way to use the word same-sex attracted. And I don't think it's up to straight Christians to tell those that are gay or same-sex attracted what they need to, what word they need to use to identify themselves, because there's pressures you face. And like you said, there's different audiences that you're talking to. And I would love for there to be less of a debate around that, because we like to divide over everything. And it doesn't feel like we need one more division. So, yeah.
And that's a hard thing, because I'm listening to some younger people that experience same-sex attraction that are trying to steward their sexuality according to a traditional biblical view. And they get so discouraged by the theological debate over how they can describe their experience, to the point where they're saying, why even try? I can't please anybody. Here, I'm trying to steward my sexuality. This isn't easy, because I'm giving up something. And now I have theological debates if I'm condemning me if I use the word gay, or if I describe myself as same-sex attracted. And people like to jump on board and say, well, you can't say that, because you're declaring that's your identity. And it's like, no, I'm not. Yeah. I just want you to understand me. I want to be seen by you. I mean, I love how that person reacted to the previous podcast by saying, I felt seen. And I think people want to be seen. They want to be known. They want to be loved. And the only way you can be seen and known and loved is to be vulnerable and tell people how you really are and how you experience the world. So, you want people to have that opportunity to be honest and come to the table and say, hey, this is how I experience the world, without feeling like now I just entered into a theological debate.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
Yeah. And that's a word churches need to hear and denominations need to hear, because I think we, being the straight, evangelical church, are making it really hard, much harder for people to be open and even to just walk a path of discipleship that's actually honest. Because we have so much condemnation even about what words you use, and we have whole blog articles and books out about why you shouldn't use that word and you should use this word instead. And I think we're definitely missing what's the straining out the gnat, right? That kind of thing, right? So Becky, let me ask you, we talked, Jack shared in his sermon in episode 67, the timeline about how you guys met. And I think this was a word you used, Jack, and as we talked about some questions. So it's in quotes, ex-gay here. But Becky, when you were dating Jack, he told you he was, quote, ex-gay. And then can you kind of go over the timeline? And because I don't remember all the specifics. When you got married, and then was it after you were married that he told you, hey, at some point he said, hey, I'm actually not straight? Like, was that before you were married or after you were married that you found that out?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for asking that. I appreciate that. The one thing I also want to say with regard to what you were just talking about with terms is that's something that we've come across too, is people don't know what bucket to put us in. So they tend to really mess up with terms on that too, or feel that we're using the wrong term when we describe our marriage as a mixed orientation marriage. But I was not aware that I was in a mixed orientation marriage for 23 years. Mm-hmm. So it was not until we were married that long. But I do want to back up, if you're asking me about the timeline, just to let you know, that God was sovereign in our situation. And I feel that he can be that way in the situation for many, many people who have maybe even discounted the idea of getting married, even when they deal with same-sex attraction. In our particular case, it was very supernatural, the way that God brought us together. In the beginning, I had been in a very difficult relationship for many years that was very abusive, and the Lord supernaturally delivered me from that. That's a whole story in itself. But at that time, I felt like the Lord was saying to me to just sit with him for 2 years, not date, not do anything, just let him heal me and sit with him. And that's what I did. And then right at the end of those 2 years, I had a dream. And in that dream, I felt like the Lord was saying to me, I have your husband for you, and he is going to be at a particular conference next week. I wasn't scheduled to go to that conference, and it was in a different state, but my folks were running it, so I could pick up the phone and say, hey, I think I want to come to your conference. And sure enough, there were 3,000 people there, and nevertheless, I met Jack. And when I saw Jack, I knew that was the person that had been in the dream. So it was very supernatural for me. I knew God was doing something. And obviously Jack and I needed to get to know each other. We needed to go through that process, and we weren't married for 2.5 years even after that. But he was upfront with me when we were first talking, in that he described himself as ex-gay. Now, in a lot of subsequent conversations we have, I believe that he was telling me what he believed was true, because he had been through reparative therapy. He had been through a lot of prayer and, different kinds of inner healing and different sorts of laying on of hands and things like that, sort of praying the gay away, which was really popular. I had a big paradigm for that. I was in a crowd where that was not that wasn't that unusual, and it didn't bother me. I knew that if God could deliver me, then God surely could deliver Jack, and I believe that he did to a particular extent from living under a gay identity, I guess is how I would put that. But so when we were married under the presumption that he was ex-gay, but that he was fully able to participate within this marriage. And I feel that that was true. Now, I'll be very honest with you in saying that for the first 23 years of our marriage, we learned very quickly how to be a good team. We have 2 special needs children, and we needed to learn how to do well together. And I think Jack and I as individuals blend very well together. But sex was kind of crappy for 23 years. It really was. But it was okay because we were very busy with special needs kids and different things going on. But it wasn't really as fulfilling probably as, but it wasn't really that important to me. I think I was just being a mom. Then we're about next week to celebrate our 26th anniversary. And so 23 years ago, so then 3 years ago, the Lord really, as was told, that whole story was told in episode 67. So I won't rehash that. But how that hit me is in the depths of my heart, I think I knew that was true, but that hadn't been said out loud before. And so that threw me for a little while into a place where I didn't know where I fit for a little bit. I was kind of looking at Jack a little bit differently. I was like, well, who are you? What does this mean? How does this relate to our marriage? What does that mean for me as a woman? Where do I fit in that? Are you attracted to me at all? What's happening?
Yeah.
And it did take me a little while to gain my footing in that. But then something very interesting happened is that I got mad at Jack at that. I felt like I had been lied to at the beginning. As we worked those things through, I realized that that's not what because that's what he had been wanting to believe about himself so deeply that's what he was sharing with me. So I don't think that it was intentional deceit at all. But I felt like, this is different than what I signed up for. But then I started watching Jack really become very raw and open and vulnerable with the Lord in a different way than he ever had in our marriage. He started getting up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning to just get desperate for God and seek God. And I started watching Jack begin to change. I started watching the Lord pursue him and him pursue the Lord. I started seeing him saying, okay, Lord, nothing is off the table. You can deal with anything in my life. And he was doing that very genuinely. And I think that as he was doing that, it really brought a new sense of respect for Jack and his personhood and his devotion to the Lord and his discipleship. And so I began saying, maybe I need to enter into this a little bit more and partner with him a little bit and go down this path. The Lord, and that's when I began to lean into two separate things. Number one, the dream that God gave me saying, this is your husband, and I had to say, well, if that was true then, it's still true now. And then I began learning a lot more about covenant and what covenant really means. And covenant, while sex is a part of that when you're talking about marriage, it is not all that there is to it. There is just a oneness that is there, regardless of that. I've known of some marriages that have never been able to have sex, maybe perhaps due to disability or whatever. And particularly one couple that they were as united as any two people I had ever seen. And so Jack and I began together just deciding to really press into the whole idea of covenant and covenant marriage. And what does that mean? And understanding that has nothing to do with our actual desires. It has to do with our attractions. And those are actually two different things. And that's a lot. That's a whole other thing to go down. But that our desires and our attractions really are different. And Jack was very attracted to me because of our covenant. We had that connection, and I was very attracted to Jack. And as we leaned into that, we also found that our sexual relationship became much better because in terms of covenant, when you really look at it very biblically, covenant is really being able to press into the Lord and have him do for you what you cannot do for yourself. And because Christ was the center of our covenant relationship, we literally had to pray a few times and ask him to come into our bedroom and be that covenant piece for us, and kind of reteach us how to relate to each other sexually and do for us what we weren't sure how we could do for ourselves. And really, those have been incredibly beautiful encounters. Encounters, in fact, that as I've sat and talked to some of my straight friends who are in straight marriages, some of these ladies that I've talked to will just lean into me and say, I wish I had in my marriage what you have in yours, even though it doesn't look to the world like what we have should work. But when we sit and have that time to have those paragraphs to actually explain what's going on, we're seeing that people are actually longing for what Jack and I have, which is incredibly unique.
Yeah,
it is, but it's really good.
Works.
Our marriage is solid and it's good. But no, just the short answer to your timeline, I wasn't totally aware until about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change even one thing at this point. I would have 3 years ago.
Yeah.
At this point, I would not.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Well, and I ask that about the timeline because I think most stories I've heard end in divorce. When something like this happens, where in a Christian setting, one of the two, for whatever reason, like the guys, these are people I know, people that maybe I went to college with or whatever, and was hiding that or had repressed it because of it's for whatever reason, but we're going to do this God's way. And then it became too much. And then they shared it. And then it quickly just, dissolves from there. And so I think that's really powerful, what you shared and your testimony for for straight marriages as well. I'm going to come back to that. I've got a question for you in a minute about that. But I thought what you said is really good about sex too, because I feel like, the work I do with Beyond the Battle and my own struggles and my own journey, our culture, wow, we worship sex. Our culture, that is the number one idol in our culture, and it's the number one temptation for me. It's this idea that if you're married, you better be having the best sex in the world, and if you're single, you better go out and have the best sex in the world. Like, sex is it is such the number one driving force for singles, for married people. So if you're not having good sex in your marriage, you better go find somebody else. You better go outside of your marriage and find it, or go to porn. And so I love any time we can have a conversation that takes sex off of this idolatry, this pedestal of idolatry. And we can look at what actually makes up a healthy relationship first and foremost, but also look at sex the way it's meant to be, way it's meant to be looked at, and maybe examine. And Jack, I'm going to transition this over to a question for you. If we can examine in sex, what is it I'm really after? What is it I'm really looking for? What's the deeper need that I'm trying to get out of this? Because you've talked to me before in a conversation about, so like in my Beyond the Battle groups, we've had several guys come through who are same-sex attracted or gay. These are guys that believe in the traditional view of marriage and sex between a man and a woman, and they're on different journeys of figuring that out. Some are in mixed orientation marriages. Some are single and celibate and trying to live out a single celibate life. But you are really encouraged that we have gay and straight guys, or straight and non-straight guys together in the same group, because you said, often it's like, oh, you're not straight, you go over here and have your group, and then you straight guys, you go over here and have your group. I just thought it would be good to hear for listeners to hear your thoughts behind that, on why you think that's a good thing, and how. Actually, I referenced this in episode 67. You've mentioned like we're all in the same boat, actually, straight and non-straight. And some people they're like, no, we're not in the same boat. So explain what you mean by that.
I think we are in the same boat in the sense that, we're all trying to manage and steward our sexuality. We're trying to live a holy life. And so it doesn't matter so much what you're attracted to. I mentioned in my testimony that I love the statement by Dr. Kurt Thompson. And, the question is, why, after Adam and Eve sinned, why did they cover themselves around the waist?
Yeah.
They didn't sin in that area. Why didn't they cover their hands or their mouth? And I think he had such an insightful answer. He said, when we experience shame, our first reaction is to cover the parts of ourselves that are different from other people. And so I think it's healthy for me, like if I am talking about my sexuality, to be in a group with other guys that may be straight guys, because it's that vulnerability for me to be with them and to talk about how I experience temptation or arousal that's different from them, to me, to be the most vulnerable. And I think that is such a healthy part of just being able to expose how you are, how you process, and in just a situation of just being honest and raw and vulnerable with other people. And I think it's a good thing, because I think especially people that experience a sexuality like I do, we have a tendency to think we're so different from everybody else, and we don't feel like we're included. We feel like we're left out, like we're the minority, we're the weird people, we're the gay people. And I think to be in an environment where it's gay, straight, everybody together, it just kind of just takes away those barriers. And we realize, we're all kind of dealing with the same issues. We're all kind of struggling. We all are just trying to, understand our identity in Christ and just, yield to the desires that God gives us versus, leaning into our fleshly desires.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. In your sermon testimony, you talked about that identity in Christ piece. Yeah. And, I forget how you said it. It was so well done. I literally tell people, like, that's the best talk I've ever heard on this subject. So
I can remember what I
said. The whole thing, and I've listened to national people talk about this. It's just really, really well done. But I love just the part, where you talked about I just relate to this as a straight guy who struggles with, sexual sin, sexual temptation, where I think we're all looking for sex, romance, kind of an idealistic romantic experience to give us validation, to give us identity, to make us feel like we're valuable. And ultimately, we can only find that in Jesus, that value, that love, that intimacy is found in him. And we go to sex to find it, because it's like this quick fix of what feels like intimacy, but it's not intimacy, and it's not intimacy at the deepest level that we find in Jesus. And so that's what I love about the conversations we've had. It's one of the many things I love about that sermon you gave, is it draws all of us back, whether you're straight or not straight, or whether, there's people that don't struggle with sexual sin at all. But they're struggling with other sins. Maybe it's greed. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's the accumulation of things or of status. It's the insecurities that propel them and motivate them to, lose sleep at night or whatever it might be. The answer is the same for all of us, right? It's like Jesus, and I'm not trying to make it sound Sunday schooly, but there is a really deep level of understanding. We are the Father's beloved sons and daughters, his children, and that love is through Jesus. And just to be able to find that, I try to tell people that are single, that's where you find your wholeness. You don't find it in a relationship. And I try to tell people that are married, don't look to your spouse to give that to you. You have to find that in Jesus. And I feel like that's been a big part of your journey.
Yeah, it really has been. And I think that is, what's been good about our journey, and even the last 3 years of being really honest, is, I think so often sex masquerades as something that is going to be so fulfilling, and, it can be, but it's like, what do you really desire? What are the desires that God has put in you that you're really searching for? I think sometimes we get confused by what arouses us. Whatever arouses us is thinking, oh, that's what I really need to pursue. And I think that's the whole Galatians 5 story. You got the flesh and then you got the spirit. And that flesh is always tricking you into thinking, hey, that's arousing you. That's getting your attention. That's what you pursue. And it's denying that part of yourself and saying, no, I'll be fulfilled in the desires that Christ has put in my heart. And I think that's a lot of what we've had, especially I think I've discovered over the last 3 years, is because it's easy to think that what arouses you is who you are and how you are. Yeah. And now that's just your flesh that you're just fighting against. What is it really that God has put in your heart? And I think for me, it was in my heart to be married, Becky, to love my wife. And I always did, but I'd always just be confused if I got aroused by something and think, oh no, what's wrong with me? And it's like, no, that's just the flesh that's just trying to distract you and make you feel disqualified. And it's you're not disqualified because of something in your flesh that pops up. If you pursue it, that's a little problem there. But, if you can deny it and resist it according to like how, the Bible instructs us with the Holy Spirit, you got something going there, and that's a great thing. But I think so often a lot of us feel disqualified by what arouses us instead of learning to be mature and ignoring those and just saying, hey, if I have to deal with that the rest of my life, that's okay. But to deal with it in community as well, to have people understand what you're dealing with. So.
Good.
Yeah, the community piece is huge. That's the second piece of that intimacy, I think, it's with God first, and then healthy community where you can be open. And like the listener that emailed in, to be seen, known, and loved in community. That's huge. That's huge. So I'm glad you brought that up. Becky, you were talking earlier about, marriage, and I too look at a marriage like you and Jax, and I admire you. I just think you have so much to offer straight couples as far as it comes to marriage advice. And I think about even my own story, and obviously a lot of the guys that I've walked with through Beyond the Battle. I'd say it's a pretty common marital story where one spouse or the other, the husband or wife or both, they just go, look, I'm not attracted to my spouse anymore. I'm just not attracted to them anymore. They've changed. They're different than who they were when I met them. They do these things that really annoy me. Maybe their body has changed. I'm not attracted to them anymore. And over here, maybe there's someone who I am attracted to, or I know there's a world of women or of men out there that I would be attracted to. So that's, I think, a number one reason marriages split up is just circumstances that create feeling of non-attraction, right? And I was thinking about a mixed orientation marriage, and you guys have had to work through a lot when it comes to, what's a natural attraction and not. And you hit on some of this before. Feel free to repeat any of it. But just what advice or encouragement would you give to married couples who are struggling? Just general married couples that are struggling in their marriages with this idea of attraction. Where do I go from here? Is this the end? Well, what encouragement would you give to them?
Well, I think once again we hit on this a little while ago. You did, especially that sex has been elevated to this place where you think that is the litmus test of a marriage, and I would just say no, it's not. The litmus test of a marriage is the covenant relationship that you have, and I like how you and Jack were talking a few minutes ago about asking the question, what is it that you're really looking for? Because what arouses you, as we were talking about, really that's just a surface indication of what you're really looking for. And if you take a few minutes, if you take some time with the Lord to really understand that, I think you're going to come up with a whole different answer. And so feeling like you're not attracted to your spouse anymore, there's lots of levels to that. You might be feeling it sexually, but there may be a lot of other things that you need to get curious about in your relationship. How have I been hurt by this person? How is this person maybe not meeting my needs in other ways? And how am I looking at this person to meet needs that they were never created to meet? Yeah. Yep. How am I looking at this person saying, I want you to fulfill something that really only the Lord's going to be able to do for you? And so I think we tend to throw a lot of that on our spouse unfairly. But there's, every situation, just like Jack was saying, you can't just say it with one words. Every situation requires a whole paragraph for people to understand, okay, well, why is this happening in your marriage? But I think that people need to stop and ask themselves and ask the Lord to help them understand that paragraph for them, rather than just saying, I'm not attracted anymore. This is not fulfilling me on a sexual level, therefore it must be wrong. That in itself is a wrong statement for any Christian to make. There's got to be some deeper things we need to start being able to look at. And I think as we're able, but I think that a piece of understanding that is missing in a lot of teaching really is understanding this covenant piece. And I think we even throw that on ourselves a little too much. I think we look at each other and say, well, this covenant isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we haven't learned how to lean into God for what we really cannot do for ourselves. I mean, I think it's almost unfair to look at a couple and say, okay, you guys just work this out. You grit it through, you work it out, you grit your teeth, you make this happen. And, God's going to give you strength to do it. I think we need to be a little bit more of pursuing the Lord together to do what we honestly can't do for ourselves. Marriage is hard. And don't get me wrong, those first 3 years were, well, the first year particularly, it was very difficult. It was a lot of that. It wasn't just, one day I had an epiphany and now everything is great. But the Lord had a process to take people through. And I think people also need to learn the skill of being patient with God's process, both in themselves and in their spouse and in their relationship. But I do think yesterday we were at a meeting where they gave a illustration about golf. We were just talking with some friends, and it was about letting the club do the work. Now, I'm not a golfer, but it was about letting the club do the work instead of just trying to use your own strength completely to hit a long drive. I think that means something to golfers. It might not totally mean anything to me, but the idea of letting the club do the work, that did hit me. Mm-hmm. That you had to be postured correctly. You had to have the right posture to hit the ball right. You got to hold the club right and all that. But it's the club that's going to do the work. And the club is the Holy Spirit. And I believe that is also true in marriages. And I believe that's true in our personal lives. So I don't know if that, and I really don't mean to sound religious, because honestly, I am not a religious person at all. But I know what God can do. And I know what he's supposed to do. And I know where I'm not leaning into him to do it when I need to.
Yeah.
And that is something I had to learn at a whole different level when this became at the forefront of our marriage.
Yeah. Well, what I hear from you in your marriage, from what you've shared in this interview so far, is it's like you went back to the covenant. The covenant is what kept you together. But then as you sort of worked the covenant, so to speak, it wasn't just a matter of duty and white knuckling it. Yeah. It was, when we get to the roots of this covenant and we work it, it produced fruit. Like working the covenant produced better marital fruit.
Oh yeah.
Whereas I think we normally think of it the other way. It's like, well, if there's fruit, then I'll stick to the covenant. Yeah. And you're saying, no, we start with the covenant and we worked it, and that's all that kept us together. But as we work the covenant and what that actually meant and is, it produced fruit because we stayed with it. And I think that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
It did. And I will also say that in some of the fruit that has produced is not only do Jack and I have the best marriage we've ever had, but honestly, I don't think there's another person in the world that either of us would rather spend time with. Yeah. We can sit and just have conversation easily 2-3 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And feel like we haven't, it has become easy, very easy between. And that's part of what that fruit is. It didn't necessarily, we liked spending time together, but it didn't necessarily start at that level.
Yeah.
But it is at that level now. And I'm very grateful to God for that, because he's the one that did the work. He truly is.
Yeah. That's
but
good.
We had to partner with him. We had to position ourselves correctly to let him do that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Let me ask you, Jack, maybe this is for you. This is from a listener as well that listened to the last episode and then wrote into the podcast. It's from a guy, and he asks, is there a way for men with SSA to develop non-sexual, non-emotional friendships in a safe, healthy, God-pleasing way? If so, how? And then he also writes as some context for that. I had someone reach out to me. So this person writing is at same-sex attracted. I had someone reach out to me who was local. It would be nice to have a local friend who shares the same struggle, but my guard went up immediately. This other person was also same-sex attracted. With 2+ years of sobriety, safety, with 2+ years of sobriety, safety and continued sobriety are of utmost importance to me. So that's the email. And hopefully I didn't butcher that too much, but essentially he's saying, hey, I'm an SSA guy. I'm sounds like I'm trying to live a single celibate life. And I'm afraid that if I want friendships with other guys that are SSA, because you could relate, right? On a level that we both struggle with this. But I'm afraid that this other person's intentions, maybe they want more than a friendship, and or maybe we both are going to want more than a friendship. Should we put ourselves in that situation? And that's good. There's a lot of layers to that. So how would you respond to this listener?
Yeah, I mean, I get his point. I think it is important that you develop good, honest friendships. But I have friendships with same-sex attracted guys that I'm vulnerable with, as well as I have friendships with straight guys I'm very vulnerable with. And, really, as you start talking, it's really no difference than when you're together, what you desire or what arouses you. So, I mean, I think he can develop the same intimate, vulnerable friendships with straight guys. It doesn't necessarily have to be a guy that actually experiences the same things you do, because even if a straight guy is being very vulnerable, your vulnerability is very similar and what you're struggling with is very similar. So, I mean, I guess I would invite him to don't limit himself to just thinking he has to be friends with the same sex attracted guy. But also, as I've notice a lot of guys are looking for friendships to be honest and raw and vulnerable with, that you just start asking other people and say, hey, I want to do a Bible study, or I want to study a book together. Do you want to do this with me? And do you want to be honest? And I think a lot of guys want to go for it. Even, suggest reading your book together. I mean, that book just encourages vulnerability. And I think that's what I've encouraged other same-sex attracted guys to do. He said, get together some of your friends and be honest and raw with them. And share your story, but share it around a book like yours. And I think, because I think what I've noticed in my story, the straight people that react to my story with probably the most compassion and understanding are guys that have had to look at their own sexual brokenness. And they're kind of recognizing, yep, I kind of get what it's like to be sexually broken. I kind of get your story. It's not a big deal to me.
Whether they're gay or straight, right?
Whether gay or straight. The people that usually have a hard time with my story are usually straight guys who've never dealt with their own sexual brokenness, or kind of ignore it, or they kind of think it's cool, or you're supposed to be this way, that every guy's supposed to lust, that every guy's supposed to, look at women the wrong way. And I think that's just kind of avoid that crowd, but, find a group of people that are like, yeah, I'll read Noah's book with you, because they're the kind of guys that will understand you anyway. So hopefully that would help. But
yeah, no, that's, and you, I don't know, you had mentioned Revoice to me before, Jack, as well. I know for this listener writing in, if you're looking for community with those that are committed to the traditional biblical sexual ethic of man and woman in marriage, but who are also gay or same-sex attracted, Nate Collins, who I've interviewed before on this podcast, I have to go look at the feed to see what episode that was, but it was about a year ago or so. So I'd encourage this listener to go listen to the interview with Nate. Nate founded and runs Revoice with the idea of helping, like the other email said, helping non-straight Christians feel seen and known and heard, and also create discipleship pathways that are committed to the traditional biblical, sexual ethic. And I will say, within Revoice and within what would be called sometimes the Side B community, there is a diversity of how to engage with these types of friendships and relationships. But I think it is healthy. I think what Nate's doing is good. I think what Nate's doing is healthy, and that could be just a good person to reach out to as well, is just to reach out to Nate.
Yeah, and Revoice is trying to set up local chapters, because the Revoice is based out, I think, in St. Louis. And so I think right now they have 6 local chapters in different cities. They're trying to get more so they can put together like communities or forums together. So, check out Revoice. I think it's US, and see if they have any community groups in his area. He might be able to plug in that way, or they might be able to help him
And they're also on Facebook.
Yeah.
Under-
Yeah. And you can reach out to Nate on Twitter. He's really he's really active on Twitter. You could find him. I think his handle's just Nate Collins. I don't remember what it is. Maybe it's something else. But look him up, and you can send him messages. I think we initially connected just via Twitter, sending messages to each other. And I always hesitate. I don't want to sound like I was a youth pastor for a couple of years. Like that youth pastor question, how far is too far? I had a conversation with Wesley Hill on the podcast as well, probably about a year ago, about his book called Spiritual Friendship. And that might be another resource to look at for this listener. But I think, and I asked him that question on there, how far is too far? And I kind of, joked about it, like the youth pastor nature of it. I would say for this listener is obviously someone who's like fearful that I could put myself into a compromising situation, And again, I'm straight. I'm not saying it's the same. But for me, I know when I'm having a friendship with a woman, I know what my intentions are. I know if this is just like a good, healthy, normal friendship. And I think you can have that as a married man. You can have friendships with women in the church and wherever. It's a good thing and healthy. But when you're crossing lines, when if she's, you know when you're deceiving yourself. And so directly to this question, I would just be really clear with this person that's reaching out to you, like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is I'm just laying it out, and I'm nothing else beyond that. And if that's where they're at, then go for it. And if you feel like, for lack of a better word, boundaries, if those boundaries are ever being crossed, you're just like, nope, it's not, I'm out. I'm done. So I don't know. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but.
So that's good advice.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, we got a couple more questions here. How do you guys think, Jack and Becky, how do you think the church should respond to gay people?
Ooh, that's a good question. Do you want to go or want me to take that?
Well, we could, either one of us
All
could.
right. Well, I'll start. You
with
can
great
fill in.
fervor.
I think the church has done a poor job reaching out to the LGBTQ community. I look at my story, when I, first told somebody that I thought I was gay, I was in my early 20s. So that's back in the 90s. And, the church thought, hey, you just go through reparative therapy and you'll become straight. You deal with the broken things in your life and God will make you straight. Now, the problem is that's never promised in the Bible. It's never promised that gay people would become straight. And, the church kind of made up a promise. And I think a lot of people, thousands and hundreds of thousands of people were believing that claim, and it just wasn't true. And I think, it left a lot of people devastated. And then I think, the church kind of doesn't know what to do with people if they're not going to be straight. I mean, people listen to me and be like, well, you're married. You can't be same-sex, right? You can't be gay anymore. You have to be straight. And it's like, oh no, I can still be. They have a hard time
you are.
Yeah, they have a hard time understanding that gay doesn't refer to a behavior. That's just kind of how you are. And I think so many people in the church think if you're gay, then you must be sinning. You're doing something wrong. The Bible says never says there's anything wrong with having a homosexual orientation. It's just all the Bible only refers to behaviors that you do that are wrong. So I think the church just needs to first wake up and understand that to have a same-sex attracted orientation is not sinful. And second thing, I think they need to just give people the same compassion that you give to a straight person, listening to their story and not just trying to compartmentalize. That word. Into one little box. And, I had a guy the other day I was talking to, and he just kept on getting stuck on the fact that I'm still same-sex attracted. And I said, you have your whole sexual story that you explained to me, but you don't want to put my story in one box. You just can't do that. And I think that's for one thing, just listen to people's story, just ask questions, get to know them. But another thing, I think, the church, we need to offer people to be able to come to church and that are curious and that are wondering that it may be gay or on the LGBT plus community, and let them just figure out who is Jesus. I love in Matthew 11, at the end of Matthew 11, Jesus says, come to me. All the other times in the Bible, Jesus would say, follow me. In the Gospels, he starts with, hey, follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. But at the end of Matthew 11, he says something different. He says, hey, just come to me. Do you have a burden? Are you carrying something that's heavy? Just come to me and learn that I'm gentle and I'm kind and compassionate and that I'm easy. And I think that's what that invitation needs to be anybody who comes to church, no matter what they're dealing with. I get emotional. Just, experience Jesus. And you pick it up. And that, and I think what an opportunity to say, hey, are you carrying a burden? Are you heavy laden? Everybody is. Then just experience Jesus. You don't have to exactly, it's not that point. He doesn't say, okay, then follow me. Yeah, eventually you will, but just sit with Jesus and experience his compassion. So, I think that is our vision for our church, that no matter who walks in the doors, that they would experience the compassion of Jesus.
Absolutely.
And that exchange, the load they're carrying for, just kindness of Jesus. So,
yeah.
What are you going to add?
Yeah, well, I would just add to that also that I think in the church, we don't tend to have a lot of patience for the process when people are doing their best to follow the Lord. I think that sometimes we just expect that one prayer is going to fix it.
Yeah.
And I come from a family of deliverance ministers, so I'm very much into the let's pray and see what God does. Nevertheless, a lot of times that is a long process, and I think that we also need to lean in a little too, that Jesus also knows what he's doing, and Jesus may be doing some things that maybe we don't see. And so I think we want to have a very open and inviting process, a very open and inviting church. But our goal is just to point them to Jesus and then trust Jesus to do the work in their life, because I believe that he will, whatever that is. And so while we're very traditional in the way that we view, and we have a very traditional sexual ethic in our church, that doesn't mean that we expect that everybody who walks in the church is going to have that same ethic. And it doesn't mean that we're going to try to preach them our ethic immediately either. Yeah. Our idea is simply to point them to Jesus and really trust the Lord to do what the Lord's going to do in their lives. That's really up to him, more than it is up to us. And as they ask questions, we're there to answer. And we're also there to ask them questions. Yeah. We're not there to just tell them our story and to put it down. We are there to really primarily ask them questions, because I believe at least in my experience, the more that you take time to ask people questions, the Lord's going to begin speaking to them even in the answers they begin giving. Yeah, that's good. It doesn't always have to be me that has the great answer. I just need to be in partnership with the Lord, even in how to ask questions. What are you looking for? Yeah,
that's good.
That's awesome. That's good. Yeah. Well, hey, let me. I have more questions than we have time for. I'm not a good podcast host. I have just so many questions. Yeah. So we're going to shift into kind of rapid fire mode, because I want to ask all these against my better judgment. And so this one is a little bit out of left field, but it ties in with, I think it does tie into the last question about how, how should the church respond to gay people? But we just finished Pride Month in the month of June. And every year, Pride Month gets a little bit more proud. It gets a little bit more. It just gets a little bit more. I talked about that a little bit in episode 67. Just, I see it kind of everywhere now. It's in, products, and it's at the store and on commercials and little kid cartoons and stuff like that too. And I am always conflicted. I'm always conflicted with Pride Month. And again, this is there's probably longer. There's a long answer we could do for this. But I'm just wondering, part of my conflictedness is like I remember. Well, now it's me giving all the long answers here on my questions, but there's something good about Pride Month in the sense that of like Nate Collins in his book All But Invisible. He talks about the sexual revolution, and he says of like Woodstock and how we all look at it and are like, that's so sinful. He says one of the good things that came out, and I'm not saying you have to agree or disagree with this, but Nate would say one of the good things that came out of the sexual revolution was gay people became visible. Like just in secular society, it was like, oh yeah, you exist, And there's something about like the emailer said, I'm known, I'm seen, I'm loved from the podcast we did. There's something about Pride Month that allows people to be known and seen in a positive way, rather than, the negative way. Then obviously the conflicted nature is, the secular culture is certainly promoting the behaviors too, right? Like the behaviors that we would not choose to promote, and even promoting them at a young age to children and things like that. And I don't know. Long, not a good question for rapid fire, but originally I thought this was scheduled. We were going to do it during June, and I just thought, just talk to me right now. Give me some guidance on Pride Month and just how to emotionally process the month as it happens.
I mean, it is tricky. I mean, it goes from people just wanting to be seen, like, hey, understand me, to, they're getting a lot of sexual, way too sexual, and it gets, almost a little bit disgusting, But I think, part of it, I think as Christians, we need to look at that as an opportunity for us to show kindness to people. And instead of showing so much judgment to people, say, show kindness. I mean, because that's the way Christ found all of us in the midst of our sins, and he showed us kindness. He didn't sit there and judge and say, oh boy, that's a really bad sin, you're doing a parade, you don't get to come. But I mean, kind of went to parades and he found people in trees, and that's the compassion. So I mean, look at this as an opportunity to show people kindness. And I think that's kind of what I get tired of people judging Gay Pride Month, like, oh boy, what other people celebrate their sin. And I'm like, do you ever watch TV? Have you ever seen movies? You heterosexual people have been doing it for a lot longer than us gay people have been doing. Yeah. So, show a little compassion here. So, I mean, I just think it's an opportunity to show kindness. And it's interesting, since I shared my testimony, went on the video, and some people, gay people have contacted me, and I've had lunch with, that don't hold to my sexual ethic. They have a different sexual ethic. And, they would say to me, this was interesting. They said, I don't agree with your sexual ethic, but what I appreciate is that you showed kindness. You showed love to me. You showed respect to me. I would go to your church. Didn't show up yet. But, they said that you showed kindness. And one guy even said to me, you make church safer for me to go to. Because he said, so often I feel as a gay man who doesn't hold your sexual ethic, I'm banned from going to church. So I thought that's the last message. We don't want anybody to have that message. Anybody should feel comfortable walking in church. So for me, gay pride, I get, it is different. I mean, it is everywhere. Flags are everywhere now. But I think, heck, as Christians, we're just called to show kindness. So, maybe it's all right, you got something to say. I
do. So I'm going to do this as rapid fire as I can. But during those 3 years, the Lord really began breaking my heart for the LGBTQ plus community, because I had the view that I think many, many Christians have now. Just, those are those gay people over there doing their thing. And I've got to have my little gay token friend over here, and then I'm good. Otherwise, I just ignore it all. But something that happened, and this is usually something that needs a minute to absorb, but I'll still say it quickly, is that my son and I were having a conversation about this. He was probably, 16, 17 at the time. And I began pondering the gay pride flag, because what you hear generally in a lot of Christian circles is, let's take back the rainbow. The rainbow belongs to us. The rainbow doesn't belong to them. What are they doing? What an affront to put that as their, symbol. And I began thinking about that. And I began thinking about what the rainbow really symbolized in the Bible, and what that was a symbol of covenant. What that was a symbol of covenant was God not wanting to destroy the earth again over sin, right? But him wanting to recreate, to have communion and relationship with those people rather than destroying them again. That's what the rainbow represents. And us as Christians have such a stronger symbol of covenant, which is the cross. That we don't need honestly, be honest with you, we don't need the rainbow anymore because we already have that. So what does the rainbow signify? It signifies God wanting to come to the earth and having relationship with people who are broken and who are desperate. And I began wondering, what if God actually gave them and allowed them to have that as their symbol? So that when we as Christians see it, it would not drive us into anger. It would drive us into intercession and say, wait a minute, I'm seeing this flag. Let me remember that God wants covenant with the people flying this flag. And therefore allowing that flag, instead of being repulsed by it, to draw you into some intercession and to a different level of compassion of what God really wants to do, that he still sent Christ to save them as well. And so then I also learned that the gay pride flag really only has 6 colors, but the actual rainbow has 7 colors. And the color that is missing from the gay pride flag is indigo. That color right between blue and purple is not in the gay pride flag. But as you look at that the symbolization of indigo actually symbolizes identity. So my feeling with the whole gay pride flag and with all of that is, number one, I wanted to let it drive me into intercession over the fact that God wants covenant with those people. And number two, that I'm not there to take that flag back. My job is to add the indigo to it. My job is to add the identity to it. My job is to present the indigo and say, would you consider adding this identity piece to your flag? And then let's see what Jesus does.
That's powerful. I love it. Thank you. That's awesome. Okay, just a couple more. Jack, why did it take you so long to tell your story?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think, I thought honestly I was going to become straight. I mean, that was a promise to me in my 20s. And that was a promise that, I was getting counseling before we were married and going, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to get married in, a month, 2 months, now a few days. And like, oh, don't worry, honeymoon night, you'll turn straight. I bought that. And then my honeymoon night, I'm like, wait a minute, things aren't going that way. But I always loved Becky and I always wanted to be with her. So that was never the question. And then I think when we got married, I still kind of thought, well, maybe it's going to happen now. And I think the hard part of reparative therapy, it's all based on if, you try hard enough, if you're good enough, you get enough prayer, you'll become straight. And I think you just kind of live with this overwhelming sense of, man, I'm such a bad Christian. I can't even get God to heal me. And I think, you have the guilt and shame of already being, gay, and you don't like that. And then the guilt and shame of God's not even healing you. And I think, you just kind of learn to live with it. And I mean, I wasn't like trying to intentionally deceive Becky because I thought this is supposed to happen. And so I don't think I ever told anybody that it was still there, just more about guilt and shame and condemnation. Like I
and you also really turned your sexuality off. Yeah. You just
I turned it
numbed
off.
to that.
So I wasn't doing porn. I wasn't like pursuing other guys. And, I just kind of learned to turn everything off. And that worked for me. And a lot of reparative therapy was also, if you don't do it, you're not it. So that was kind of part of reparative therapy because I think they knew it didn't work that good. So if you don't do it, then you're not gay anymore. So I think it was a combination of that. And I think it was just, part of it was just, I don't think I had the security enough to know that God just unconditionally loved me. I don't think I felt that. I think I was still striving back then to see, okay, can I prove it to him? What more repentance do I have to do for God to maybe love me enough and then say, okay, now I'll make you straight. So I think that there's a lot of striving. Probably striving prevented me the most, from being honest. Thinking I can, if I'm good enough, I'll become straight pretty soon.
Let me clump these last two into one question. It'll be for both of you. Have you paid a price for sharing your story? And what is your vision for sharing your story?
Oh, you go with the price. What's the price?
So we have paid a price. I think Jack alluded to it earlier that when he shares his story, particularly people that do not have a sexual story that they've processed, really shun that. So we've lost a lot of friends. We've lost a lot of people coming to we've lost a lot of people in our church. We've had people who have just flat out said, well, I'm not going to church with a gay person, and leave. there's some friendships I think that we were surprised that we lost in the midst of that. And that was very painful for us. I feel that some of that we still process, and some of that you still gauge even as you're meeting new people. Yeah. And there's a little bit of wondering, well, how are they going to respond to this story when they really know, and what side are they going to land on, or are they going to leave too? That's something we still deal with, I would say.
That is
so that is a price that we've paid. However, and maybe you can speak into this just as strongly as I can, or more. The vision for it is, I think, exactly what I was talking about with the flag and with the understanding and with with being a church where things are done better, where things are done in a way that are really going to, I believe, reflect Christ and fulfill the Great Commission. Right? This is a people group that is really unreached in a lot of ways, and they hate the church. Actually, for some pretty good reasons. Yeah. There's some Christians that will say, especially when their kids come out, but I thought we were supposed to hate gay people. Yeah. And they really honestly believe that. Yeah. So I think part of our vision is not that we're going to change the whole world necessarily, but that the Lord would use us to at least bridge a little bit of the gap between the church and the LGBTQ community and the sexually broken community at large.
Yeah. Well, I think, part of our goal of sharing our story is just to kind of normalize the discussion of sex and sexuality. Sex is such a big part of our life, but we don't like to always talk about it in church or even have casual conversations until a person experiences real brokenness. Do people enter in that conversation? So I think, we like to talk about sex and sexuality and the meaning of that, even though it's a small part of your life, but it really impacts the big part of your life. Yeah. So I think that's been good. I think one of the benefits of sharing our story, and probably Noah, you experience the same thing with your vulnerability, is it's an on-ramp for other people to really be honest with you. Yes, people to say, I could never tell anybody this part of my story, but since you told me yours, I'll tell you my junk. And so that has been probably the benefit of it.
Sometimes it has nothing to do with sex either.
Yeah.
They just are more vulnerable overall.
Exactly, anything. So we've experienced that, of people saying, hey, I need to talk to you. I need to tell you this. I need to get this off my chest. I've never told anybody this before. You're a safe person. Yes. So that has been that's probably been worth all the losses of, people saying, hey, let me be honest with you. So that's that's the win. People can be just honest, because you know what that's like, just to find the healing of just like, the secret that I've been carrying, get it out. And so I think we want to be a church that can steward our own story, but actually help other people steward their own story and kind of lead them on their journey of holiness with Christ leading them. So,
yeah. Well, I'll say this, about, I don't know, the people that left your church or whatever over this. And I've said this on the podcast before. I'm trying to think of a politically correct word that I can say on the podcast about my feelings about that, how frustrating that is, because I feel like it's so stupid. We'll go with stupid. Okay. Yeah. It's so stupid for people to say, oh, my pastor, he gave this, he gave his story and he's gay, as if like, here's what normal Christian is and you're gay, so you're down here. Sure. Like, I'm going to leave because you are less of a Christian. Yeah. And whenever I hear any story of a LGBTQ plus, a non-straight, a same-sex attracted Christian who is oriented to be attracted to the same sex, and they've read scripture and they've met Jesus, and they're saying, I'm going to follow what the Bible says. I'm going to follow this extremely hard path of sex being between a man and a woman within marriage, even though that doesn't really make any sense to the way my body is physiologically wired. But I'm going to pick up my cross. Yeah. Ever heard that before in scripture? And I'm going to follow Jesus. And my cross is heavy and it has a lot of splinters in it, but I'm going to carry it for Jesus. Jack, you specifically, and other friends of mine like you that I know that are doing that, you are super Christians. I mean, you are like, you are you are the model of maturity. Not that you don't have struggles and things like that, right? But like, I don't know how anyone can look at you and say you're a subpar pastor.
Yeah.
You are exuding like the most mature walk you can walk, which is like, this goes against my nature, and yet I'm gonna follow Jesus anyway. And I just, it breaks my heart. It makes me angry. But I just want to encourage you as well that I mean, those people are so wrong. And I for me in my walk, I mean, I read Single Gay Christian by Greg Coles.
Yeah.
The book is so good. It is so good. I'm just reading it as a straight married guy going, I want to follow Jesus the way Greg Coles follows Jesus.
Exactly.
And if I can do that, I will be just fine. The problems in my marriage, the problems in my sexual temptations, all that will be solved if I can follow Jesus the way Greg Coles does, the way Jack Systema does. So just thank you. And God is glorified, and I'm inspired. And so
well
I just
said, Noah, thank you.
Thank you so much. It was very encouraging. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, hey, happy 26th anniversary. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
26th. Okay. 26. Yes.
Thank you.
So keep it going. That's awesome. Happy anniversary. And thank you both so much for being vulnerable in such a public space like this and coming on the podcast. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Noah.
It was our honor. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome back to Flipside Land. What a great interview, right? Man. So a couple things just real quick. Feel free to reach out to me, to the podcast. Email is podcast@beyondthebattle.net. As you work through this stuff in your own life, in your own journey, I'm happy to interact with you a little bit on email. If you have a question you'd like to be read on air, let me know. Put that in the email and let me know. And if you'd like to get in touch with Jack and Becky, just reach out to podcast@beyondthebattle.net, and I'll make sure that I get you in touch with them as well. So we'll start to transition here, start to switch gears into Noah's Rant land. For those of you that know that land and know what's coming, brace yourself. I will say, too, I forgot to say this in the intro, the Flip Side now is on YouTube as well. Go to youtube.com/Noah Filipiak if you want to watch. These full episodes are on YouTube. And maybe, just maybe, last episode 68, the Hillsong Exposed episode, there might be a post-credits scene. There might be. You just never know. You watch these blockbuster movies like The Flip Side. Sometimes the producers throw in a little post-credits scene. You never know. I mean, if it were there, it would be worth your time. You would watch it and you would go, wow, I am so glad I watched this whole episode to watch that post-credits scene. That would be, it will by far, money back guarantee. So just something. Maybe. I can't promise anything, but you never know. Well, I wonder what time it is. Well, that alarm bell, a little sound, a little alarmy soundy, tells us, there's only one thing, tells us it is time for the only, the one, the exclusive, the premiere, Noah's Rant. Now, what Noah's Rant is, for those who don't know, it is an attempt at comedy that is awkwardly transitioned after a very in-depth, serious, substantive podcast episode. Great interview with Jack and Becky. All that's over. All the greatness, over. It's done. It's through. If you choose to keep listening to the Flip Side right now, you will only encounter ridiculousness. You will listen and you will say, I wish I hadn't listened to that. If Jack and Becky are listening right now, they'll say, how did I ever allow myself to come on such a disrespectful? I don't know the right word. Such a low quality podcast as the Flip Side. Well, this is your warning, Jack and Becky. This is your warning. Anyone listening, stop listening now. The podcast is over. If you continue listening, you've been warned. All that is left is bad content. It's your fault. Don't blame me. Don't send me hate mail telling me how bad the Noah's Rant is. I told you to stop listening. So now, without further ado, it is time for those of you still around for the one, the only Noah's Rant.
Noah's Rant.
All right. Getting a little angry brew going. Getting a little angry brew coursing through the veins. You know what I'm saying? Here's the deal. Here's what I appreciate about angry brew. It's good. It's what I appreciate about it. It is good coffee. Okay? That's what I appreciate about it. Now, back in the day, back in the early days of the Flip Side, this was one of the first Noah's Rants I ever did. It might have been the second Noah's Rant I ever did. By the way, shout out to producer Travis. He compiled for our 50th anniversary episode all of the Noah's Rants ever done up to that point. It is a 5-hour episode of only Noah's Rant. It is a 5-hour episode of only Noah's Rant. So give Travis some love and go find that episode. It would be 19 episodes ago, episode 50. Go click it. You don't probably want to listen to all 5 hours of it, but give Travis a download. So I think it was the second one, something like that. I talked about how terrible Folgers coffee is. There was a gas station in the Lansing area where I used to live, and it promoted Folgers Cafe. And I did a whole rant on how that's like promoting a fast food restaurant, promoting that they sell French fries sold underneath the garbage can that were found under there. Like, and putting that on a big sign and saying, yeah, come in. We have French fries from under the garbage. That's if you promote Folgers, let alone it's bad enough to drink it. If you promote it, I mean, it's really a whole nother level bad. But somehow, I don't know how, because, the Flip Side is listened to by most of the world. Most of the world, at least that has, internet access and online and things, listens to the Flip Side. So somehow, I don't know how the message got lost in translation. I am a parent of 3 children. You can see them. It is crazy, the mirroring. It's very hard to know which way is left and right. There's my children, some photos of my cute little children. There are times as a parent, I tell my children something and they don't listen to me. Their dad. I know, right? I'm a smart guy. And I tell them something and they just don't listen. I think that might be what's happening with Noah's Rant. I don't think it's an issue of not enough people listening to Noah's Rant. I think they're listening and they're choosing not to do what I say. That's hard. That stings a little. Because here's the deal. I went on a retreat this week. Shout out to retreats. Yeah. Shout out to taking a break. In ministry especially. Beautiful retreat center. Oh, gorgeous. Amazing. Beautiful. I'm not going to share where I went. The reason is, their coffee was so nasty. If I had not taken things into my own hands, it would have ruined my whole retreat. How can you have a retreat with bad coffee? It's like, hey, we have this amazing retreat center. It's very beautiful. Trails, lots of Jesus-y sort of things to reflect on, quiet, and we're going to serve you nasty, whatever it was, Folgers, Maxwell House. Let me tell you, that coffee, it tasted like if you took good coffee, if you took some Angry Brew or some Chris's Blend, and you brewed it, and then you added about a gallon of water to it, and then you left it out on your countertop for a month, and then you put it in an air pot, those things that you push down and the coffee comes out. And then I came up and put my cup under it to have a delicious, relaxing blend of coffee. And then I went on to my retreat time with God to do some journaling, to reflect on his goodness. And then I drank from the sewers of Hades himself. Hades itself. I know some of you good old friends out there would get mad if I said where that coffee really came from. So I just used the Greek word for it instead. We can say Hades on the flip side. That coffee was so nasty. And look, this is the thing. Some of you drink that coffee. You think that's okay. Some of you serve that coffee at your churches. You're inviting people into your churches to hear about Jesus. You want them to hear the best message in the world, and your coffee it's what Satan serves. For all eternity, that's what he serves. And you're serving it at your church because you're cheap. Because it's like 5 cents a pound. Because it was grown by slaves. That's actually true. Kind of. Maybe. Questionable. Get, what's the word? Sourced? Fair trade. Ethically sourced. Get ethically sourced coffee, please. It tastes better anyway because it's real and it wasn't brewed by Satan. Not brewed by Satan. Roasted and produced by him. And he does brew it in his homeland for all eternity. Don't serve that stuff at your church. Stop. Remember Prohibition? They put all the liquor in barrels. I don't get that. Why was all the liquor in barrels anyway? If you didn't want the liquor, just dump it down the drain. We need prohibition when it comes to cheap, nasty coffee. It is illegal. It is a cardinal sin. It is an abomination. This needs to be added to the Bible. I don't care about that verse that says don't add or subtract anything. We can make an exception here. Okay. If you drink Folgers, Maxwell House, whatever another nasty, cheap, generic garbage is out there, you're not drinking coffee. You think you're having coffee. You're like, oh, good coffee, yeah. No. That would be like taking a saltine cracker, dunking it in ketchup, and eating it, and thinking you're eating pizza, and going, oh, I love pizza. Yeah, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles love pizza. Pizza Hut, Domino's. Pizza's an American tradition. I'm eating pizza right now. Crunchy, crunchy, crunch. Ketchup dripping down the side of your lip. I love pizza. No. A saltine dipped in ketchup is not pizza, friend. Let me come alongside you. Let me be your accountability partner. Let me be your Covenant Eyes ally. That's not actually pizza. That's nasty, and you need to stop. That's not actually coffee. It's nasty, and you need to stop. This is like digging a half-eaten hamburger, Big Mac, out of the garbage at McDonald's and thinking you're eating a steak. That is not a steak. That is nasty. It is gross. And you need to stop. Shout out to Angry Brew for sponsoring The Flip Side Noah's Rant. We together are making the world a better place. Stop drinking nasty coffee. Drink Angry Brew. Drink Chris's Blend. Drink anything but Folgers or Maxwell House. We pray that God's kingdom comes here to this place, that his will is done the way God's will is done in heaven, that it happens this way on earth. So why would you brew Satan's coffee? Why would you brew Hades coffee? That's not God's kingdom coming to this place. Brew good coffee. And by all means, retreat center that I just visited. Please listen to Noah's Rant. please heed these words because I want to come back. But I can't. If you brew nasty Folgers coffee when I'm there. Epilogue. I did not drink that nasty garbage. I dumped it down the drain, even though I was on retreat, even though I was out in the middle of nowhere. I punched into my little GPS on my phone the nearest gas station, and I drove there praying, naming it and claiming it, saying, Lord, if you ever come through for me now. I need a gas station that sells good coffee, because I was in the middle of the woods. There was no coffee shops around. There was no grocery stores. And I drove up to this gas station, and I tell you what, brothers and sisters, right connected to that gas station was a Tim Hortons. Let me tell you, Timmy H came through for me. The Lord provided a ram in the bush. He provided those amazing bags of coffee on the shelf at Tim Hortons inside the gas station, and I bought me a bag. I bought 2 bags because I needed some decaf as well. And I went back to my retreat center, and I actually stole the little coffee maker that they have out in the commons room, and I took it into my room, and I made my own coffee. I did. It was awesome. 'Cause that's what we do around here. Making the world a better place, bringing God's kingdom here to this place, his will, the way it's done in heaven. And that is what Noah's Rant is all about. And I think we've accomplished that today. And if not, I'll just do another rant on cheap coffee 10 episodes from now, and we will keep doing that for all of eternity until all cheap coffee has been thrown in the garbage. Thank you for listening. Go to beyondthebattle.net to join a 7-week small group with me. Go to patreon.com/Noah Filipiak if you want to support the show. angrybrew.com, promo code FLIP. I will see you next time on the flip side.
The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak is a Beyond Ministries production. Copyright Noah Filipiak. www.noahfilipiak.com. Theme music by Kyle Lake at K-Lake Music. Used with permission. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.
It's time to bring me closer. There's no purgatory, cause you're in or you're out. When you see him in the clouds, then you know it's going down. Raise them, raise them, raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is what your days. Do you ever